That's true, and I'm going to switch it a little bit now to financial issues. A lot of criticism has come up about Democrats taking large donations from a very small group of wealthy donors. I'm curious as to both of you, what your plans are in terms of what your goal would be in terms of getting people to donate at intervals of $100 or less. How are you going to get those people to donate, and what percentage of our party's money would you like to see coming from that? And we started with Kimberly last, so I think I'll start with, did we start? Well, I'm going to start with you.
Let's do whichever.
I'm going to go with it.
So we've been talking out of both sides of our mouths as a party about campaign finance for far too long. Like, on the one hand, we say money in politics is bad, but we kind of imply that it's really only bad when Republicans take money, and it's okay when we do it, trust us, et cetera, right? So, you know, the activists in this party have secured several victories over the last few years, right? Getting the party to forswear taking money from oil companies, taking money from private prison companies, taking money from charter school companies, taking money from tobacco companies. That is a great start. And if you look at the party's finances, and the money that comes into the party, right, the biggest chunk by far is from our sisters and brothers in the labor movement. The next biggest chunk is from candidates, right? It's from candidate campaigns, politicians. And then you've got corporate money. It's actually not a huge part of the direct contributions, but we should zero that out. And we should make a plan to replace all of the corporate contributions that come into the party with small dollar contributions, with grassroots fundraising, and have benchmarks to meet that over the next 2 years, right? We can't unilaterally disarm, right? Beating every Republican every chance we get is a moral obligation that we have, especially as the party moves closer and closer to the far right. So we can't afford to just throw up our hands and say, okay, we'll just lose elections. At the same time, we absolutely know that good field operations, good grassroots operations, and good candidates can beat big money. So we've got to redouble our efforts to take the great work that was done in the DEM 2016, 2018, 2020 program, the small dollar program, and we really need to empower our clubs and our central committees to get involved in that program and turn every single one of our activists into grassroots fundraisers. That's the only way that we're going to generate enough money. I don't want to see us just replace one group of wealthy donors with another group of wealthy donors. I want us to replace that money that has strings attached with money that comes from our base, that comes from our activists who want to invest in our values and invest in our program. But there's a whole other set of problems, which is the fact that, yeah, the Democratic Party cannot take money from oil companies, but the oil companies just back their dump trucks full of money up to candidates who will take it. And then we see we see representatives from safe Democratic districts voting with oil companies instead of their constituents. That's a problem, right? So the other thing we need to do is to take the few kinds of campaign finance reforms that actually have withstood legal scrutiny, because, as you know, we have a Supreme Court that thinks that dollars are free speech, and have struck down all of the most ambitious attempts at campaign finance reform. But there are some that have survived. Here, down in San Diego, there are things that have survived at the county level and at the state level around the country. We need to be a grassroots force, a united force, to pass those kinds of reforms at the city, county, and state level to level the playing field for our Democratic candidates. So to me, it's a 1-2 punch of zeroing out over the next couple of years all the corporate money that comes directly into the party, and then pushing back on that money that goes directly to candidates, which frankly to me is far more dangerous and destructive because it's special interests giving money directly to the people who vote on their issues, to at least do what we can to move the ball forward in California, even though at the federal level things aren't looking really good for the next several years for significant reform on campaign finance. Thank you.
So, Daraka, I'm going to push back a little bit. When I decided to run, I met with a bunch of people in the Democratic Party of Orange County. And the first thing every single person told me was that we have no money for local candidates. That needs to be fixed. How are you going to fix it?
Well, So the model that we built in Santa Barbara, we also don't make donations directly to candidates. We don't want to just be a pot of money that we give checks to candidates. What we did instead was build a crackerjack field operation so that if you're running for school board or city council anywhere in Santa Barbara County and you go and recruit some volunteers, you can bring them into a fully functioning phone bank with predictive dialers. And as long as you're also making voter IDs on some of our top ticket stuff, you talk about yourself, you promote yourself. That to me is the infrastructure that levels the playing field. So I think that party building is a very particular set of projects. It's not the same thing as candidate recruitment. It's not the same thing as just electing more people with a D next to their name. It's about building the kind of organization that simultaneously elects people and can hold them accountable once they're in office. So to me, it's not about raising money to give more money to central committees for them to write checks to candidates. It's about candidates having to go to the party to get an endorsement based on their values and their sweat equity. That party having a really great operation that can put them in office even if they're not independently wealthy or don't come from the right side of the tracks or don't have a personal database full of country club folks. Regular people can come and plug into that. But the beauty of that system is when those politicians then are in office and they're voting and they're building up a record and they come back to that party and say, hey, I'm running again, I'd like to be endorsed. That gives us an opportunity to look at how they've done, to see if they've stood with us, to hold them accountable. So to me, the model that we've built in politics of checks flowing around, of just like money-based, whoever can raise the most money then gets more money from the power brokers, that's a broken system. And the system that I want is a strong, grassroots, values-driven, progressive party in every community that regular folks can come to get the resources they need to go and represent us in office. And regular people can use as a platform to hold those people accountable. That's party building. And I'm the candidate in this race that's done that at the local level for a decade.
Thank you. Kimberly, how about you? How are you going to bring in more small dollar donations? What's your goal in terms of that? And how are you going to help local candidates?
Yeah, thank you. So let me see if I can synthesize what Daraka said. I think basically what he's saying is you need a finance and fundraising plan. The number one job for the chair of the California Democratic Party is raising money, is raising the operational and programmatic budget for the party. If you are not able to raise money, you should not be running for this position. During my last campaign, we raised over $600,000. This campaign so far, we've raised $350,000. More than 6,000 donors combined. Not one nickel of that came from corporations. Not one nickel came from big pharma, oil, tobacco, charter schools, private prison industry, not one nickel. What that should demonstrate to you is that there are thousands and thousands of people who want to invest in a party they believe in. There are many people out there who want to give and invest in this party, but we have to give them a party worth investing in. One of the things that we really need to remember is that in order to diversify our revenue streams, the party really needs to have a development department. While I was at Emerge California, under my 7-year tenure, we quadrupled the budget. That means having a development plan that accounts for events, online fundraising, and raising money from major donor investors, people who want to invest in the institution and the programming that comes through the institution. So I think it's really easy to talk about, these kinds of programs in theory. but I have a track record of actually raising the kinds of money it is going to take to A, keep the lights on, and B, diversify our revenue streams enough so that we can start moving away from having the kind of donors to fund this party that we all want. I think it's really important, especially these days, that people are very comfortable with the kinds of monies that are funding and supporting our party. And I'm incredibly proud of the more than 6,000 donors who supported our campaign, only 3 of which, by the way, had ever given to the Democratic Party before. And so again, what that demonstrates is that there are people out there who want to invest, but they want to invest in the type of leadership that they can believe in and trust in, and that they are going to have a party that they can believe and trust in.